Arizona State takes a win in the non-conference finale versus the UNLV Rebels, 37-10. Hi, everybody. Post-game, Zach Keenan and Hode Rubino here for DevilsDigest.com at Sun Devil Stadium. And we won't keep you waiting any longer, as this was a bizarre game for ASU. They only led by 4 at the half, so safe to say this was a tale of two halves.
Yeah, absolutely was. And you saw the first drive by ASU, an interception by Jaden Daniels in the end zone. And on the other hand, the ASU defense, I felt, and maybe in some ways, that was actually gassed. It's funny because it was definitely a warm night, much warmer than it was last week. But you're playing a team from Las Vegas, which, let's face it, has pretty much the same climate as they have here in Tempe. So this wasn't going to be a team that was going to let the climate and the weather elements really affect them. And in the first half, I believe they had not one but 2 scoring drives of 16 plays. So I felt that this ASU defense was really gashed. And the offense just really couldn't get going. And almost it seems like the interception on that first drive really kind of set the tone in an adverse way for the Sun Devils. But the second half, and we'll get into the specifics a little later on, absolute domination by this ASU defense and this offense. Even though in the third quarter, I don't think was still trying to find itself somewhat, but in the fourth quarter, really was getting into a groove, definitely feeding off the defense, which again was outstanding in the last 2 quarters. And look, we're going to talk a little later on about all the bizarre happenings in the Pac12 South tonight. Some definitely unexpected scores. So maybe this game was normal in comparison. Yes, ASU has stuff to fix. I know we're going to talk about it a lot tonight and also the rest of the week. But right now, ASU has to be very happy at 2-0 with a pretty convincing win, which I think makes you feel just a little better than it did last week, just because Southern Utah is not in the caliber of UNLV, and UNLV really posed a lot of issues, especially on offense, for the Sun Devils in the first half. But I think ASU came up big in the second half with halftime adjustments, really able to figure out their opponent, and here they are at 2-0.
We'll start with the offense, because last week it seemed like the passing game was almost on life support. And then this week, Arizona State is again held to under 200 passing yards. Jaden Daniels finished with 175, which I believe is around 25 fewer, or at least 25 fewer than last week. So again, is there reason for concern in this pass game?
Well, I guess I can look at it in a few different ways. ASU is literally, or I should say almost undefeated. They only had that one loss against USC last year when they rushed for over 200 yards. And today was just another day in the office, rushing for 287 yards. Jaden Daniels, ironically, even though he struggled somewhat in the passing game, had a career-high 122 rushing yards. Now, when you look at the film, and the coaches are going to delve into even more tomorrow and the rest of the week, they're going to see that a lot of times where Jaden Daniels was actually running, getting positive yards, moving the chains, there may have been a lot of those downs where he actually could have just sat in the pocket, or maybe just stepped out of the pocket a little and just find a wide receiver down the field. So that's something that really needs to happen against better defenses as the schedule gets tougher and tougher. And it's safe to say that starting next week, we're going to start seeing teams that are nowhere the lesser caliber of a Southern Utah or UNLV like we saw tonight. But yeah, I think there is still some concern about the passing game, if I'm being honest. And Zach Hill, the offensive coordinator, to his credit after the game, said the passing game is progressing. I mean, he wasn't definitely really excited or elated about what we saw, and he just feels that looking in the film and making the corrections that need to be made, can hopefully get this passing game on a better track. But when you have such a dominating rushing game, which ironically or not, a lot of it did come from Jaden Daniels with the absence of DeMonte Traynham, and also when you had Daniel Ngata, who came into the game with a bum shoulder, injured his thumb during the game, and still finishes with 64 yards rushing, averaging 10 yards a carry. You still have Rashad White and 90 yards rushing. And again, like I said, Jaden Daniels, 122 yards rushing. Sure, that can really negate the struggles you have in the passing game, but I don't think that the coaches or even just any fan looking at this game from start to finish can come away really pleased with the passing game. This is something that's going to have to be solved. the game against BYU next week and all the Pac-12 slate that waits after that are going to present much tougher secondaries than we saw tonight against UNLV, last week against Southern Utah. So that is a cloud, if you will, that's still lurking over this ASU offense. But again, to their credit, they played much better in the second half than did the first half. And I think the passing game did hit somewhat of a stride in the second half. But you just like to see a more consistent effort and not put everything on the shoulders of the running game, because again, against UNLV and probably even last week against Southern Utah, you could probably get away with not having DeMonte Traynor. We obviously played last week, but was injured and wasn't able to finish the game, and obviously did not play at all tonight. But against the teams that are on the horizon right now for the Sun Devils, that's going to be really, really tough. You can't expect Jaden Daniels to have another 100 or so rushing yards. You really need to have a better support overall from the running game, but more importantly, just have the passing game keep those defenses honest. Definitely didn't happen in the first half. Somewhat happened in the second half, but definitely has to get better.
Coach Herm Edwards said in his post-game interview that DeMonte Traynor will be available for BYU next week, which, even though the rushing game isn't a huge concern, that is helpful. Let's shift over to the defense, because they gave up 10 points in the first half, a start slow just like the offense. But then the second half, they must have drank Darian's secret stuff in the locker room. He finished with 8 tackles and 2 sacks, as the defense in the second half, they posted a shutout. They only allowed 19 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that was an absolute incredible performance by the ASU defense, which ironically did a great job containing Charles Williams. I think he only had 13 carries for 35 yards. The same running back that had 127 yards just the week before. And sure, you can say it was against FCS opponents against Eastern Washington. But look, it's one thing for the ASU defense, for the coaches and players, to make Charles Williams the focal point of their scouting report, to talk about it all week that we need to stop that running back. But to actually do it in the game when the lights are on, that's a whole different story. And not everything always goes according to plan, but that plan did work. Now, UNLV quarterback Doug Brumfield definitely ran the ball really, really well. But I felt that he was getting punished in a legal way, obviously, by the ASU defenders time and time again, and eventually really had to leave the game. And his quarterback, Justin Rogers, who struggled last week when they lost to Eastern Washington, struggled again against the Sun Devil defense. So I felt that ASU, even though they let Brumfield really gain a lot of yards with his feet, they still contained him as a passer very, very well. And again, in the second half, whether it's running, whether it's passing, this Rebels offense was absolutely shut down completely. So credit ASU, first of all, for containing Charles Williams and really forcing other players like the quarterback, Doug Brumfield, to be the running game for the Rebels. And in the second half, like I said, with their halftime adjustments, really were able to put on an absolute masterpiece over here. And again, you can talk about a lesser opponent, but guess what? There's a lot of Pac-12 schools last week and this week that also played against the quote-unquote lesser opponents with a much less rate of success than ASU had this week and even last week for that matter. So this defense, which didn't have a horrible game last year, but I think the film session probably wasn't the prettiest. I think this film session will be just a little more pleasant, especially concentrate in the second half. But overall, we expect this ASU defense to be dominant. We expect this ASU defense to really be able to carry the team for the rest of the year. And sure, Antonio Pierce, the defense coordinator, said, "Look, I mean, there's going to be some nights where the offense is going to have to carry us because maybe the defense is going to struggle." But tonight it was definitely not this night. This defense, especially in the second half, absolutely won the game for the Sun Devils. And I don't think it's going to be the last time that we're going to see this, because the talent. The abundance of talent on this defense is absolutely, I think unmatched in the Pac-12. And what we saw in the second half is just another example of that.
Oh, let's take our focus and zoom it out of Tempe and up and down the West Coast instead, where ASU's coaches will be the first ones to give you the spiel that we only focus on ourselves. But We all know, Hode, that they walked into the locker room after the game, looked at their phones, TVs, and they did the same exact thing when they saw the scores from the Pac-12, especially the Pac-12 South. This conference, what's going on?
I really don't know what's going on. I don't know how a team like Stanford, who looked absolutely abysmal against Kansas State, albeit on the road, scores 42 points in the Coliseum and beats USC. You look at Utah, which had a pretty convincing win, play against BYU, who we saw against U of A last week, and really got handled. I mean, it wasn't a dominating loss by the Cougars, but definitely surprised to see Utah struggling as much as they did. And even University of Arizona, I mean, they didn't play all that bad in the loss to BYU. They absolutely get obliterated in Tucson by a San Diego State team, who, by the way, is another squad that didn't look that great in Week 1. So if you're asking me what's going on, I really don't know. And look, and I will say that Colorado, yes, they lost to Texas A&M, but actually they may have had the best showing out of all the teams that lost in the Pac-12 tonight. But look, the bottom line is, I know it's like way early, and just like you don't want to be overreaction Week 1 guy, you probably don't want to be Week 2 overreaction guy. But UCLA and ASU right now look the best in the Pac-12 South. Now, maybe that changes next week. Maybe that changes 3 weeks from now. But right now, ASU has to feel good about where they're at. And this does not mean they have nothing to clean up on offense and defense. And again, the film session might be a little more pleasant this week than it was last week, but there's going to be plenty of criticism, plenty of feedback that the coaches are going to give the players. But it is so much easier, especially just from the mental aspect, to clean up mistakes when you're undefeated, to do it to do it after a victory. So if you're ASU, again, I know you're going to focus on yourselves, and I did ask Antonio Pierce after the game. I said, I know you're motivated anyway, not because of what's going on in the Pac-12, but when you see what's going on in the Pac-12, I mean, does that move the needle a little to be even more motivated? Because you can see what you can accomplish when you see the foes of your division really not accomplishing all that much. And he said, no, we're focused on ourselves. We're focused on ourselves. But I think there's going to be some discussion, obviously behind closed doors, between the ASU coaches and players. Say, look, we definitely have to clean up what all the deficiencies that we showed in Week 1 and Week 2. But aside from that, don't only be motivated by that, but really be motivated by what you're seeing right now in the Pac-12 South, because aside from you and UCLA, the rest of your conference foes seem to be an absolute mess right now. The Pac-12 South Championship is really there for you for the taking. So just make sure that you really can take care of your business, because again, early on, how a team plays can really dictate what's going to happen in the weeks to come. ASU has not played outstanding football for the first 2 weeks. I'll be the first one to say that, and I don't think there's going to be many fans who will disagree with me on that. I know the ASU coaches definitely won't disagree with that, but there's definitely, I think, a rate of deficiency that is more fixable with ASU compared to a lot of other teams in the Pac-12, not only South but even North for that matter. And I think that ASU should absolutely be motivated, whether they say it out loud or not, about what's going on in the Pac-12, because right now they are looking better than a lot of other teams out there.
Sun Devils can the Rebels 37-10 for a 27-point victory here in Tempe. He's Hode Rubino. I'm Zach Keenan. The two of us will be in Provo, Utah, a week from today for Arizona State versus BYU. But in the meantime, we'll have some more pregame previews as well as postgame coverage from tonight. But in the meantime, we'll see you next time for Devil's Digest.